Your thoughts are not protecting your peace, they're destroying it. And the reason you haven't stopped is because it feels like you're doing the right thing. It feels like responsibility, like awareness, like you're staying in control. Because you've probably told yourself this before, I just need to think this through. I just need to understand it better. I just need to be prepared. So you think a little more, then a little more. And before you realize it, you're stuck in it, not for seconds, for hours. And from the outside, nothing looks wrong. You're still functioning, still working, still showing up. But internally, there's no off switch. Even in silence, your mind keeps going, replaying what already happened, predicting what might happen, trying to stay one step ahead of everything. You try to rest, but your thoughts don't. You try to be present, but something keeps pulling you out of the moment. And here's the part that makes this so frustrating. Nothing is actually wrong, and yet you don't feel at peace. There's this constant low-level tension, like your mind is always running in the background, always scanning, always working. And you've gotten so used to it, you don't even question it anymore. You just call it thinking. But let's be honest. This isn't just thinking. This is control. The need to figure everything out in order to feel okay. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Overthinking feels responsible. But it's actually a lack of trust. A lack of trust that things can unfold without you mentally controlling every detail. A lack of trust that you'll be okay even if things don't go perfectly. A lack of trust that God is still present even when you don't have everything figured out. So your mind keeps working, not because it wants to overwhelm you, but because it's trying to protect you. But in doing that, it's doing something else. It's keeping you in a constant loop, because overthinking doesn't solve problems. It keeps you mentally attached to them. Read that again. You're not resolving it. You're staying connected to it. And the longer you stay connected, the harder it is to feel peace. That's why you can think about something for hours and still feel unsettled, still unsure, still restless. Because peace doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from not needing to. And that goes directly against how your mind has been trained. Because your mind believes, if I stop thinking, I might miss something. If I don't stay on top of this, something could go wrong. If I don't figure this out, I won't be okay. So it keeps going, loop after loop, thought after thought, trying to reach a point where everything finally feels settled. But that point never comes, because you cannot think your way into peace. You can only step into it when you stop trying to control everything in your mind. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't have control and peace at the same time. You can have one or the other, but not both. So if your mind is always in control mode, peace will always feel temporary, fragile, easy to lose. Now let's make this real. Imagine two people. The first person is always thinking ahead, always preparing, always trying to stay in control. When something happens, they don't just experience it. They analyze it, break it down, replay it, ask what if over and over again. They believe they're being careful, responsible, but they're never fully at rest. Even when things are going well, their mind is already searching for the next problem, the next thing to fix, the next thing to figure out, and because of that, peace never lasts. It shows up briefly, then disappears, because it depends on how resolved everything feels in their mind. Now meet the second person. They still think. They still plan. They still care, but they're not controlled by it. They know how to stop. Not perfectly, but intentionally. So when something happens, they respond, but they don't spiral. They consider, but they don't obsess. They reflect, but they don't replay endlessly. And when their mind tries to pull them into a loop, they notice it. And instead of following it, they let it pass. And because of that, they experience something the first person rarely feels. Stable peace. Not perfect peace. Not constant emotional highs. But something steady. Something that doesn't disappear every time a new thought shows up. Now here's the real question. What actually makes the difference between these two people? Because it's not intelligence. It's not discipline. It's not even how much they care. The difference is one internal habit. One pattern that runs quietly in the background. The habit of trying to control your life through your thoughts. And here's where most people get stuck. Because this habit feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're moving forward. But you're not. You're just staying in motion, mentally, without ever arriving anywhere. Thinking without resolution, processing without peace, and the longer this goes on, the more it drains you. Not all at once, but slowly, until one day you realize you don't remember what it feels like to just sit in a moment without your mind pulling you somewhere else. And that's the cost. Not just mental exhaustion, but disconnection from your own life, from the present, from God. Because when your mind is always trying to control, it leaves no room to trust. When you're always analyzing, it becomes hard to be still. And when you're constantly thinking ahead, you stop experiencing what's right in front of you. So even when you pray, your mind is still working, still trying to solve, still trying to figure things out, instead of resting, instead of trusting, instead of simply being with Him. And over time, your spiritual life starts to feel heavy. Not because God is distant, but because your mind never stops moving. So here is the truth that changes everything. Peace is not the reward for figuring everything out. It's the result of letting go of the need to. And most people never experience that because they never stop trying. They just think harder, analyze deeper, push further, hoping that eventually it will lead to rest. But it never does, because you cannot think your way into peace. You can only step into it when you stop trying to control everything. Now stop for a second. Really listen to this part. This is where most people get stuck. You don't feel anxious because your life is out of control. You feel anxious because you're trying to control everything in your mind. And those are not the same thing. That right there is the trap. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll start noticing it everywhere. In your conversations, in your decisions, in your quiet moments. You'll start catching the loops, the patterns, the habit that has been running this whole time. And that awareness is where everything begins to shift. Because in the next part, we're going to break this down even deeper. Not just what overthinking is, but exactly how it keeps pulling you back in, even when you know it's happening. And once you see that clearly, you'll finally understand why your peace keeps slipping away. And more importantly, how to stop losing it. So now that you see the pattern, here's the real question. Why do you keep going back to it? Why does your mind keep pulling you into the same loops even when you know it's not helping? Because this is where most people misunderstand the problem. Overthinking is not just a habit, it's a strategy your mind uses to try to make you feel safe, and that's why it's so hard to let go of. Because every time you think more, it feels like you're getting closer to control, closer to clarity, closer to peace. But look at your actual experience, not what you hope it does, what it actually does. Has overthinking ever brought you lasting peace? Not temporary relief. Not a quick sense of, okay, I get it now. But real, stable peace? No. Because overthinking doesn't resolve things. It keeps you mentally attached to them. That's the trap. You're not solving the problem. You're staying connected to it. And the longer you stay connected, the more it follows you. Into your day. Into your conversations. Into your quiet moments. So let's break this down clearly. Because once you see how this works, you'll start catching it in real time. It shows up first in the past. Something already happened, a conversation, a decision, a moment that didn't sit right, and your mind grabs it, not once, but repeatedly. What did they mean? Did I handle that wrong? Should I have said something else? And even though the moment is over, you're still living in it, mentally. Hours later, sometimes days later, and here's the truth most people avoid. You're not trying to understand anymore. You're trying to fix something that can't be changed. So your mind keeps searching, looking for the perfect version, the perfect response, the perfect outcome. But it never finds it. So it never stops. Now shift to the future. Because this is where overthinking hides best. Planning sounds wise. Preparation sounds responsible. But there's a line. And once you cross it, it turns into something else. Control. You start running scenarios. What if this goes wrong? What if I'm not ready? What if I make the wrong move? So you try to prepare for everything, every outcome, every mistake, every possibility. But here's what actually happens. The more scenarios you create, the more uncertainty you feel. Because now you're not dealing with reality. You're dealing with 10 different versions of it in your head, and none of them feel fully safe. So your mind keeps searching, looking for the one version where everything works out perfectly, but that version doesn't exist. So the thinking continues. Now let's talk about decisions, because this is where overthinking quietly steals your momentum. You have a choice to make. It could be small, it could be big, but instead of deciding, you analyze. You compare. You replay every option. Trying to find the perfect answer, trying to eliminate all risk, trying to avoid all regret. And the more you try to guarantee the right decision, the harder it becomes to choose it all. So you stay stuck. Not because you don't have options, but because you're trying to control the outcome before it even happens. And that's something you can't do. But your mind keeps trying anyway, and that's why you feel drained, because this habit keeps you in motion without movement, thinking without resolution, processing without peace. And here's where it gets deeper. This isn't just something that happens occasionally. It becomes your default state, your baseline. You wake up and your mind is already running, already scanning the day ahead. What needs to be done? What could go wrong? What you need to handle? And before anything even happens, you're already carrying it, that low-level tension, that background pressure. And because it's always there, you don't question it. You just call it normal. But normal doesn't mean healthy. It just means familiar. Now listen carefully. This is the part most people don't want to hear. Overthinking feels responsible, but it's actually a lack of trust. A lack of trust that things can unfold without you mentally controlling every detail. A lack of trust that you'll be okay even if things don't go perfectly. A lack of trust that God is present even when you don't have all the answers. And until that shifts, the pattern stays. Because as long as you believe you need control to feel safe, your mind will keep trying to create it, even if it costs you your peace. And this is why it affects more than just your thoughts. It affects your relationship with God. Because when your mind is always in control mode, it leaves no room to trust. When you're constantly analyzing, it becomes difficult to surrender. When you're always thinking ahead, you stop being present with Him right now. So even when you pray, your mind is still working, still solving, still trying to figure things out, instead of resting, instead of trusting, instead of simply being. And over time, your spiritual life starts to feel heavy, like something you have to manage, instead of something you get to experience. But that was never the design. You were never meant to carry everything in your mind. You were never meant to figure everything out before you feel peace. You were never meant to live in constant mental motion. So naturally, the question becomes, how do I stop? And this is where most people get it wrong. Because they try to fight overthinking with more thinking. They tell themselves, stop thinking about it. Calm down. Just relax. But that doesn't work. Because you can't control your mind into peace. Trying harder just creates more pressure, more tension, more noise. So the solution is not suppression. It's not forcing your thoughts to disappear. It's not pretending they're not there. The solution is learning a different relationship with your thoughts, to see them without automatically following them, to notice them without needing to resolve every single one, to let them pass without turning them into a loop. And this is where everything begins to shift. Because the moment you stop treating every thought like something you need to solve, you create space. And in that space, peace starts to return, not because everything is fixed, but because you're no longer constantly engaging with what disturbs it. Now we bring this into real life, because understanding this is one thing, living it is something else. So in the next part, I'm going to give you 5 powerful switches, simple shifts you can use immediately. Right in the moment your mind tries to pull you back into a loop. Not theory, not something you try later, but something you can use in real time. And once you start applying them, you won't just understand why your peace has been missing. You'll finally start experiencing it again. So now this is where everything changes, not when you understand the idea, but when the loop starts again and you respond differently. Because that moment right there, when your mind begins to pull you in, that's the turning point. Not later, not when you feel ready, right there. When the thought shows up, the replay, the what if, the urge to figure everything out, that's your opportunity, not to control it, but to break the pattern. So here are 5 powerful switches you can start using immediately, not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently. Asterisk. Switch 1. From solve it, see it. This is where most people get stuck. Because you've trained yourself to treat every thought like a problem. something to fix, something to answer, something to resolve. But not every thought needs your attention. Some just need to be seen. Asterisk, real-life example. You catch yourself replaying a conversation. Instead of diving deeper, you pause and say, "This is a loop." That's it. You don't analyze it. You don't fix it. You don't try to get to the bottom of it. You just see it, and that awareness breaks the automatic reaction. Asterisk, simple prayer. God, help me see my thoughts clearly. Asterisk, switch to from engage schweige schwor. Release asterisk, overthinking survives on engagement. Every time you answer the thought, you strengthen it. So the shift is not to fight it, but to stop feeding it. Asterisk, real life example. Asterisk, the thought comes back again. Instead of responding again, you say, "I've already been here." And you let it go, gently. No force, no frustration, just release. It may come back. That's okay. You release it again and again. Every time you do that, you weaken the pattern. Asterisk, simple prayer. God, I release what I don't need to carry. Asterisk, switch 3 from what if, what is. Overthinking pulls you into imagined futures. But peace doesn't exist there. It exists here. So you bring your attention back out of your head into reality. Asterisk, real life example. You're caught in a what if spiral. You pause, take a breath, notice your surroundings, where you are, what you can see, what you can hear. You ground yourself in the present, because this moment is where your life is actually happening. Asterisk, simple prayer. God, bring me back to what is real right now. Asterisk, switch 4 from control time troll, trust. This is the deepest shift, because at the root of overthinking is control. The belief that if you can just figure everything out, you'll finally feel safe. But here's the truth. Control is not what gives you peace. Trust is. Trust that you don't need every answer right now. Trust that you don't have to carry everything. Trust that God is present even in uncertainty. Asterisk, real life example. You're trying to predict every outcome. Instead of continuing, you pause and say, "I don't need to solve this right now." And you release the pressure. Ask. Simple prayer. Asterisk. You with what I don't understand. Asterisk, switch 5. From noise snores stillness. Your mind has been trained to fill every quiet space, but peace grows in stillness. And stillness is not something you force, it's something you allow. Asterisk, real life example. Take 1 minute. No phone, no distractions, no trying to think better. Just sit, and when thoughts come, you don't follow them. You let them pass. That's how stillness begins. Asterisk, simple prayer. God, teach me how to be still. Now here's what begins to happen when you live like this. Not perfectly, but consistently. Your mind starts to slow down, not because you forced it, but because you stopped feeding it. Those thoughts that once felt urgent start to lose their intensity. The loops that used to pull you in begin to weaken, because you're no longer engaging with them the same way. And for the first time in a long time, you experience space, real space, where your mind is not constantly occupied, where you're not being pulled in every direction, where you can sit in a moment and actually be there. And in that space, peace returns. Not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer trying to resolve everything at once. You begin to notice small things again. Stillness, clarity, presence. You begin to rest without needing everything to be figured out. You begin to trust without needing constant reassurance. And slowly, peace stops feeling temporary, stops feeling fragile, stops feeling like something you're trying to hold on to, and starts feeling like something that's just there, available, steady, real. Asterisk, you will begin to feel less mentally exhausted throughout the day. Stop replaying the same thoughts endlessly. Experience calm in moments that used to feel tense. Build a deeper sense of trust instead of control. So hear this clearly. The habit that's been quietly killing your peace is not your circumstances. It's not your responsibilities. It's not even your problems. It's your constant need to solve everything in your mind. And now that you see it, you don't have to keep living that way. Right now, you can make the shift. Not by forcing your thoughts to stop, But by choosing a different response, you can whisper, God, I don't need to figure everything out. I choose peace. And let that be enough, because it is. If this message spoke to you, do one thing right now. Go down to the comments and type, I release the need to control everything. Let that be a decision, not just words. And if you know someone who lives in their head like this, share this with them. It might free them more than you expect. If you want more simple, freeing, life-changing truths, subscribe to Bible Resolve and turn on the notification bell. Because you don't have to keep living in mental noise. You don't have to keep chasing peace through control. You don't have to carry everything in your mind. You don't have to figure everything out. You just have to let go. I'll see you in the next one.